It started with a dream. At least, I keep telling myself that's all it was. Just a dream. Nothing more. The first night it felt different. I wasn't myself, or rather I was, but everything around me was wrong. I was standing in a narrow hallway, walls covered in peeling yellow wallpaper, the kind that smells faintly of mildew and old paper. Beneath my feet, the floorboards creaked with every tiny shift of my weight. And there was a door. Heavy. Wooden. Faded green paint. I knew if I touched it, it would leave powdery flecks on my fingertips. Somehow I just knew. I didn't want to open it, but my hand moved anyway, as if pulled by invisible strings. When I pushed the door open, there was a bedroom on the other side, small, dimly lit by a weak bulb dangling from the ceiling. A child's room. Posters I didn't recognize. Toys scattered across the carpet, cheap plastic dinosaurs, a battered red truck missing a wheel. And on the bed, a woman sitting with her back to me. She was humming. A low, tuneless sound that made the tiny hairs on my arms stand up. And God, the smell, a mix of stale perfume and something sour, almost metallic. I tried to call out to her. My throat seized up. Nothing came out. Then she turned her head. Not fully, just enough that I could glimpse her profile, the sharp line of her jaw, a dark, smudged shadow around her eye, the curve of a twisted smile. "I miss you," she said in a voice I didn't recognize but that made my stomach knot with fear and longing. I woke up gasping, sheets tangled around me, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The clock on my nightstand said 3:12 a.m. At first, I sat there in the dark, trying to shake it off. But the weirdest part wasn't the dream itself. It was the feeling that I knew that hallway. I knew that room. And somewhere, deep down, I knew that woman's voice too. Even though I swear to you, I've never seen any of it before in my life. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, it wasn't just a hallway. It was a whole sequence, disjointed, like flipping through an old photo album too fast to focus, but feeling each image cut deeper than the last. First, I was in a backyard. Overgrown grass brushed against my ankles. A sagging swing set groaned in the breeze. The sky overhead was the sickly green-gray color of an oncoming storm. I could smell rain in the air, that damp, earthy thickness, and the faintest trace of burning leaves. Then a kitchen. Not mine. Not anyone's I know. Brown cabinets with tarnished brass handles, a chipped porcelain sink filled with murky dishwater. There were pictures stuck to the fridge, a crude crayon drawing of a house with stick figures standing in front of it, smiling. Someone had written, "Home Sweet Home," underneath in blocky, childish letters. And after that, a hand. Small, dirty, gripping mine tightly. A child's hand. I looked down, and I swear to God, I could feel the warmth of it. The desperate pressure. I couldn't see the child's face, just that tiny, clinging hand, and the sense of being needed. Of being trusted. I didn't want to let go. But the dream pulled me away before I could hold on any longer. I woke up again at exactly 3:12 a.m. Exactly. Same minute. Same cold sweat. Same ache in my chest, like I'd just lost something I didn't understand. This time, I sat up and turned on the light. I grabbed the nearest notebook from my desk drawer, some half-used journal I'd bought years ago and never finished, and started scribbling everything down. The images, the smells, the colors. The feel of the hand. It was so vivid, I was afraid I'd lose it if I didn't trap it on paper somehow. As if the dreams weren't just dreams. As if they were, trying to stick. I couldn't shake the feeling, even hours later as the sun rose and my world, my real world, started moving again. It all felt distant. Blurred. And a part of me. A small, awful part of me. Missed the world in the dream. The third night, I didn't even make it to bed. I passed out on the couch, still clutching that notebook, pages smeared with frantic writing and half-legible sketches, the curve of the hallway, the woman's hunched silhouette, a rough outline of the crooked swing set. It wasn't exhaustion that knocked me out. It was something heavier, something that pulled at me the second my eyes fluttered shut. This dream was quieter. No scenery. No flashing images. Just blackness. And the sound of breathing, slow, labored, so close it felt like someone was lying beside me. Then, faintly, a whisper. "Don't leave again." It was a child's voice this time. Young. Fragile. A boy, maybe 6 or 7. His words curled around my ears, thin and desperate. "I waited," he said. "I waited so long. I tried to speak, to tell him I didn't understand, that he had the wrong person, but I couldn't move. Couldn't even feel my own body. I was pinned in place, a prisoner inside my own mind. And then, a sudden rush of emotions that weren't mine. Grief. Bone-deep loneliness. A love so fierce it hurt. It tore through me, real as any waking feeling I've ever known. It didn't matter that I had no idea who that child was. My chest physically ached from the weight of it. When I finally snapped awake, I wasn't gasping or flailing like the last times. I was perfectly still. Tears were running down my face. I hadn't cried in years. The notebook had fallen to the floor. I bent down to pick it up with trembling hands and turned to a fresh page. I started a new list. A different kind of list. Things I know about the dream life. The woman in the room is familiar. Maybe a mother? But wrong somehow. There's a child, a boy, who knows me. They are waiting for me. I left them. They still remember me. I don't know them. I miss them anyway. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words until they blurred. Until the sunrise painted pale gold across the living room walls. And I realized. The dreams weren't fading anymore. They were growing. For a while I thought maybe writing everything down would keep the dreams contained. Like maybe if I put the memories on paper, they couldn't crawl any deeper into me. I was wrong. It started happening during the day, too. The first time was at the grocery store. I was standing in the cereal aisle, half asleep, reaching for a box of something, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. A little boy. Messy blonde hair. Red sneakers. Staring straight at me with wide, wounded eyes. I jerked back so hard I almost knocked over a display of canned soup. When I turned to look properly, he was gone. No one even remotely like him was in the aisle. Just some tired-looking woman scanning prices on her phone, and an old man arguing with the self-checkout machine. I laughed it off at first. A trick of the mind. Sleep deprivation. Stress. Whatever excuse I could cling to. But then it happened again. And again. Driving past an abandoned house. That house, the sagging porch and chipped green shutters so vivid it made my stomach drop. Hearing a woman's low, humming voice drifting through an open window as I walked to my car, the same tuneless melody from the dream. Catching a whiff of that metallic sour smell on the breeze, so sharp it made my throat tighten. It wasn't just dreams anymore. It was leaking into my real life. Or maybe I was leaking into theirs. One night, sitting at my kitchen table, staring blankly at my untouched dinner, I realized something else. When I closed my eyes, I couldn't clearly remember my own childhood. I mean, sure, little flashes, a Christmas tree, a scraped knee, a dog's wagging tail, but they were loose, blurry. Like old VHS tapes left out in the sun too long. The memories from the dreams, though? Crystal clear. So clear it hurt. I don't know how long I sat there, the fork dangling from my fingers, before I whispered out loud. This is not my life. I wasn't even sure who I was trying to convince anymore. The fifth night, the dream changed. It wasn't snapshots or random fragments this time. It was one long, endless moment, dragging me down like deep water. I was back in that house. Only now, it was worse. The walls were rotted, black with mold in the corners. The air was heavy and thick, each breath clogging my lungs with the taste of dust and decay. Somewhere in the distance, a faucet dripped, a slow, mocking tick, 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 that echoed through the emptiness. I tried to turn around to leave. But the hallway stretched out behind me, impossibly long, swallowing the light. There was no exit. No door. Only forward. So I walked. Because what else could I do? My bare feet stuck slightly to the warped floorboards with every step. I could feel something soft and wet seeping between the cracks underfoot. I didn't dare look down. At the end of the hall, there was another room. The door was open, swinging gently on its hinges, creaking with every sway. Inside, it was dark, pitch black, except for a narrow sliver of pale light cutting across the floor. I stepped inside. The light shifted. And suddenly I wasn't alone. The woman was there again. Closer this time. Her head hung low, hair stringy and matted. Her hands, her hands, were twitching, curling and uncurling at her sides as if she didn't know what to do with them. And at her feet, huddled in the corner, was the boy. His face was buried in his knees. Sobbing quietly. I tried to speak. Tried to move. But my body felt frozen, like the dream itself was holding me hostage. The woman lifted her head, just a little. And though her face was hidden in the shadows, I could feel her eyes locking onto mine. "You left him," she said. Not angry. Not accusing. Just stating a fact. "You left us." The room shuddered, the floor, the walls, everything vibrating like a low, growling earthquake. The light flickered and went out, plunging me into total darkness. I woke up screaming. This time, not at 3:12. This time, at 2:59. Earlier. The change terrified me more than anything else. As if the dreams weren't just growing anymore. They were getting closer. I didn't sleep the next night. Couldn't. Instead, I sat hunched at my kitchen table, notebook spread open in front of me, trying to map it all out like a crime scene. Names, none. Faces, half-formed. Locations, fuzzy but real. I started listing details from the dreams. Yellow peeling wallpaper. Green painted door. Backyard with sagging swing set. Brown kitchen cabinets, brass handles. It felt stupid. Insane. Like I was trying to reconstruct a jigsaw puzzle made of smoke. But some part of me, the part that wasn't ready to completely lose my mind, thought maybe if I found these places, if I proved they were just random images stitched together by a tired brain, I could make it stop. So I started searching. Online first. Google Earth, real estate listings, old photographs of abandoned houses. I must have spent 6 straight hours clicking through blurred images of cracked sidewalks and dead lawns and half-forgotten neighborhoods. Nothing. But then, purely by accident, while scrolling through an old local history forum, I saw it. A post titled, "Childhood Homes of My City, Post Yours." Halfway down the thread, a grainy photo. Small house. Peeling green paint on the door. Yellowed wallpaper visible through a broken window. My heart nearly stopped. The caption underneath read, "My old place on Sycamore Street, we moved out in '92. I swear sometimes I still dream about that hallway." The place was falling apart, but it was home. I blinked at the screen, rereading the sentence over and over. Sycamore Street. That was only a 20-minute drive from where I lived now. Not across the country. Not in another life. Here. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my keys and went. The notebook sat abandoned on the table, the words still fresh. Find the house. Find the truth. Find yourself. The drive to Sycamore Street was a blur. I barely remember the turns, the traffic lights, the way my hands trembled around the steering wheel. My heart was hammering in my chest, each beat screaming at me to turn around, to stop, to go home, but I couldn't. It was like I was being reeled in. The neighborhood was worse than I expected. Most of the houses were boarded up or half collapsed, yards wild with knee-high weeds. Faded, rusted mailboxes sagged on their posts. The few windows that weren't smashed had curtains drawn tight against the world. And then I saw it. At the very end of the block. A house slumped like a dying animal, green paint peeling from the door in long strips, a wide, dark window staring out at the street like a blinded eye. I pulled over and killed the engine. For a long time, I just sat there, gripping the wheel, breathing shallow little gasps that didn't seem to do anything. Everything inside me screamed to leave. But another part, the part that had been clawing its way up from the dreams, whispered, "Go inside." I don't remember getting out of the car. Don't remember walking up the broken concrete path, or pushing open the front gate with its protesting squeal. But I remember the smell when I stepped onto the porch. Wet rot. Rust. Something deeper underneath, sour, clinging. And then, the sound. Not loud. Not clear. Just humming. The same tuneless, broken melody from the dreams. Floating from somewhere inside the house, like the walls themselves were remembering. My hand was on the doorknob before I even realized it. It turned easily. The door creaked open. And for the first time since all of this began, standing there in the doorway, peering into the darkness beyond, I had the sinking, nauseating certainty that this wasn't some trick of memory or imagination. Something inside that house was waiting for me. The floor groaned under my weight as I stepped inside. It was worse than I'd imagined. The air was thick with dust, every breath scratching down my throat like sandpaper. The wallpaper, that familiar sickly yellow, hung in sagging sheets from the walls, revealing black, mold-riddled plaster underneath. I couldn't explain it, but the moment I crossed the threshold I felt lighter. Not in a good way. More like something had peeled away from me, like some thin, invisible skin had been torn off, exposing raw nerves. Every step echoed strangely, as if the house wasn't quite solid, or as if it was breathing just slightly out of sync with the world. I walked down the hallway, slow, cautious. On the left, an open doorway leading to a room filled with broken furniture, shattered glass littering the floor like ice. On the right, a small kitchen. Brown cabinets. Tarnished brass handles. Exactly like the dream. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. My knees felt like they might buckle. It wasn't just familiar. It was right. Like this place, this ruin, was mine. Like I had stood in this kitchen 1,000 times, reaching for a cup from that exact chipped shelf, scraping a chair across that exact scuffed tile floor. And beyond the kitchen, through another sagging doorway, I saw it. The backyard. Overgrown. Dead swing set leaning sideways. The sky hanging heavy and low above it. I stepped forward, barely breathing, and stared through the dirty, cracked window. And then, a flicker of movement. Someone standing at the edge of the yard, just beyond the high, tangled grass. A figure, small, hunched, staring straight at the house. I blinked. Rubbed my eyes. Looked again. Gone. Just the wind, stirring the weeds? That's what I told myself. Just the wind. But deep down, in the pit of my gut, I knew the truth. Something had seen me. Something was still here. And it remembered me even if I didn't remember it. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in that ruined kitchen, staring out at the empty yard. Long enough for the light to start fading, the edges of the sky bleeding into the color of bruises. Eventually, something broke loose inside me, a survival instinct, maybe, and I turned away from the window, heart hammering like a trapped bird in my chest. That's when I saw it. A door at the far end of the hallway. Heavy. Wooden. Painted a faded, powdery green. The same door from the dream. I moved toward it, legs shaky, as if I was walking underwater. The door wasn't fully closed. It hung ajar just enough that I could see the room beyond, and what I saw made my stomach flip. A small bedroom. Wallpaper peeling in long, curling strips. A single bed with a sagging mattress. Toys scattered across the filthy carpet. A red plastic truck missing a wheel, a few battered dinosaurs, a stuffed bear with one eye torn out. It wasn't just similar. It was exact. I staggered backward, bow rising in my throat. And that's when the memories hit. Not my memories. Not the vague, flickering flashes of my own half-forgotten childhood. These were sharp. Precise. Visceral. I remembered sitting cross-legged on that bed, clutching the one-eyed bear while a woman, my mother, sang that broken, tuneless lullaby. I remembered the smell of her faded perfume, the rough scrape of her cigarette-roughened voice. I remembered the way the floor creaked at night, just outside my door, as she paced endlessly, endlessly, endlessly. I remembered being afraid. Not of monsters under the bed. Not of the dark. Of her. Of what might happen if she stopped pacing. Of what might happen if she didn't. The memories slammed into me with so much force I staggered, clutching the wall to stay upright. Tears blurred my vision. My chest felt too tight to breathe. And for the first time, standing in that rotting shell of a house, I asked myself a question I didn't want the answer to. What if these aren't dreams at all? What if they're real? And worse, what if they're mine? I stumbled out of the house like it was on fire. Back into the dying daylight, the broken yard, the ruined street. I don't remember getting back into the car. I don't remember driving home. All I remember is the feeling, that wrong, heavy feeling, pressing down on my chest the whole way, whispering ugly things in my ear. You know this. You did this. You left. When I finally got back to my apartment, I locked the door, turned every light on, and sat in the middle of the living room floor, notebook open in front of me like a shield. I tried to write. To make sense of it. To force the dreams into neat little boxes and label them so they couldn't hurt me anymore. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, my hand moved on its own, scribbling frantic, looping letters. You were here. You left him. You left him. You left him. Over and over, the words crowding the page, growing messier and darker until the pen tore through the paper. I dropped it. Stared at my shaking hands, the ink smeared across my fingers like bruises. And then, a soft sound. From the hallway. Not loud. Barely more than the whisper of fabric against fabric. But enough. Someone was there. I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body screaming. My apartment isn't big, there's nowhere to hide. I should have seen immediately if someone was inside. But somehow the hallway looked longer now. Dimmer. Different. Like the one from the dreams. Hello? I croaked. No answer. Just that same soft shuffle, retreating into the shadows. I backed away until I hit the kitchen counter, heart jackhammering against my ribs. The notebook still lay open on the floor. But now there was something else written on the next page. Words I hadn't written. Couldn't have written. In neat, careful, childish handwriting. Come back. After that night, I stopped trusting my own eyes. The boundaries between dreaming and waking weren't just blurring anymore, they were dissolving. I'd be walking down the street and suddenly realize I didn't know where I was. Or worse, I'd recognize places that shouldn't exist. A crooked lamppost leaning over cracked concrete. A candy store with a sun-bleached, closed forever, sign swinging in the breeze. A playground where rusted swings creaked in the wind, empty, but somehow watchful. Things from the dreams. Things I shouldn't know. I called my parents. Or at least the people I believed were my parents. Their voices were familiar, warm, confused, concerned. But as they talked, my skin crawled. Every memory they mentioned, birthdays, vacations, scraped knees and school plays, felt hollow. Like props in a play I'd never auditioned for. That night, when I looked through old photo albums, it was worse. I recognized the faces. But the emotions? The memories they should have stirred? Nothing. Just a cold, blank distance. I flipped to a photo from when I must have been 6 or 7, grinning proudly on a brand new red bike. And that's when it hit me. The bike was wrong. It wasn't the battered red plastic truck from the dreams. It wasn't the half-remembered childhood clinging to my skin like cobwebs. It was something inserted, a fake piece trying to patch a hole. I slammed the album shut, heart racing, stomach churning. This is not my life. The words came out of my mouth without even thinking. And for the first time, I wasn't saying it to reassure myself. I was saying it because I knew it was true. Whatever my life had been, whatever I had been, this wasn't it. Someone had built me a life out of spare parts. And the real one, the original, was still out there. Waiting. Decaying. Calling me back. 2 nights after the photo album, after the realization, I stopped fighting it. I knew where I had to go. I had known all along. Not just back to the crumbling house on Sycamore Street. Further. There was a place behind that place, a deeper layer, like a shadow you don't notice until it starts moving on its own. I packed a bag without really thinking, a flashlight, a bottle of water, the battered notebook. The night air was thick and warm, the kind that presses down on you and fills your lungs with something heavy and sweet. Like rotting flowers. I drove through sleeping neighborhoods where the streetlights flickered like dying stars. The house looked the same. Dead. Waiting. But this time, when I stepped onto the porch, the door was already open. I didn't hesitate. I went in. Inside, the air was colder than before, sharper, like a different season entirely had settled inside the walls. The hallway stretched long and dark, but it didn't end at the bedroom this time. There was another door beyond it. One I hadn't seen before. Old wood. Iron hinges. Heavy. It was slightly ajar, just enough to see a staircase leading down into darkness. Basement. Of course there was a basement. There's always a basement. I clicked on my flashlight, its narrow beam cutting a path into the black. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended. The smell down there was worse, wet concrete, mildew, and something faintly metallic. The beam caught on something at the bottom. A door. Smaller, older, wedged into the far wall. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. It was ice cold. When I pulled it open, the flashlight flickered. And there it was. A room, lined floor to ceiling with children's drawings. Hundreds of them. Crumpled, yellowed with age, taped and tacked to the concrete walls. Each one was the same. A little boy. Standing alone in a crooked house. A door behind him. A black figure looming just out of reach. I stepped inside, heart thundering, and the door creaked shut behind me. In the silence, a soft sound started up. A voice. Whispering my name. Not the name everyone knew me by. The other name. The one I didn't remember, until that moment. And when I heard it, it felt like the whole world tilted sideways. Because it fit. It belonged to me. Like I had just found my real skin after walking around too long wearing someone else's. The moment the name settled into my mind, it was like a key turning in a lock. Memories flooded in. Not fragments. Not dreams. Real things. I was 6 years old. The house wasn't abandoned then, it was alive, suffocating with noise and tension. The woman. She was my mother, once. And she loved me, in her way. But she was sick, broken in ways a 6-year-old couldn't understand. Sometimes she would be kind. Sometimes she would be monstrous. The boy in the drawings, he wasn't just any boy. He was me. I remembered crouching in the corner of the basement, clutching the one-eyed bear, drawing the house again and again and again on scraps of paper while she screamed upstairs, screaming words that didn't make sense, at people who weren't there. I remembered the day I tried to leave. Sneaking up the basement stairs, barefoot, heart pounding. I remembered the sound of the door slamming shut. The click of the lock. I remembered pounding on it, screaming until my voice gave out, until all that was left was hoarse, dry sobbing. I remembered waiting. And waiting. And waiting. Until the waiting became all there was. Until the waiting became me. The flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor, the beam skittering across the walls, throwing the drawings into frantic, jerky motion. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to block it out, trying to force it all back into the darkness. But it was too late. It was mine now. My past. My pain. My fault. The notebook in my backpack burned against my spine, heavy with all the wrong memories, all the stolen pieces of a life I didn't even know I'd lost. And in that moment I realized something that made me want to tear my own skin off. I hadn't dreamed these memories. I hadn't imagined this life. I had forgotten it. Buried it so deep inside myself that it had grown sick and wild in the dark. And now it had clawed its way back into the light. I don't remember climbing the stairs. I don't remember leaving the basement, or stepping back into the ruined hallway where the mold crept along the walls like black veins. I only remember standing outside, gulping the night air like a drowning man. The house loomed behind me, sagging and silent. But it wasn't just the house that was hollow. It was me. I stumbled to the car, gripping the door handle until my knuckles turned white, trying to ground myself, to remember who the hell I was outside of these walls. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. The life I thought I lived. The quiet apartment, the job, the friends, the easy, shallow memories. None of it felt real anymore. It felt like a cheap story someone had whispered into my ear while I was asleep. The real memories, the ones buried under the rot, they clung to me now. Heavy. Sticky. Unshakable. I started driving without thinking. The streets blurred past, familiar and strange all at once. Half the time I wasn't sure if I was awake or dreaming. I saw the candy store again, still closed forever. The playground with its groaning swings. The crooked lamppost. And then, something new. A figure standing under the streetlight. Small. Still. Waiting. The little boy. The one from the dreams. The one with the red sneakers and the wide, sad eyes. He looked up at me as I slowed the car to a crawl, headlights catching the edges of his too thin frame. And even though I hadn't heard his voice in days, I knew exactly what he was saying. You left me. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, fighting back the sob that tore up my throat. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't enough. Some wounds don't heal just because you finally remember them. Some ghosts don't vanish just because you say you're sorry. Some ghosts are you. When I looked up again, the boy was gone. Only the crooked lamppost and the empty street remained, silent and waiting. Just like the house. Just like the memories. Just like me. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. There was nowhere left to run to. Nowhere that felt real. Instead, I drove. Aimless. Endless. Until dawn started bleeding over the horizon, casting the world in a pale, sickly light. And somewhere, out past the edge of the city, past the last gas station and the crumbling overpass, I found it. An old hospital. Long abandoned. Half the windows shattered, ivy clawing up the stone facade like desperate fingers. I didn't know how I knew to come here. I just did. The front doors hung open. Inside, the smell of mold and rust and something older hit me like a fist. I walked the halls, the floor crunching under my boots, lights slanting in through the broken windows and sickly, fractured beams. And then, a door. Basement level. Records department. Something in me, something deep buried, pushed me toward it. Inside, old file cabinets stood rusted and broken, papers scattered like dead leaves across the floor. I dug through them with numb hands, the edges slicing my fingers, the blood soaking into yellowed sheets without me even noticing. And then, tucked at the back of a drawer, under piles of forgotten records, I found it. A patient file. My real name, the one from the dream. The one the boy had whispered. And underneath it, psychological evaluation, severe dissociative fugue following traumatic childhood confinement and abandonment. Memory repression protocol recommended. New identity profile established. My hands trembled as I read it. Line after line. Paragraph after paragraph. When they found me, a feral, broken thing, they hadn't tried to heal me. They tried to erase me. Scrub the memories clean. Built a new life out of nothing. Dropped me into a new city with a new name, a new family, a neat little story. They buried the child I'd been, the terrified boy pounding on a locked basement door, under layers of lies. But you can't bury something like that forever. It rots. It festers. It crawls back up when you least expect it, wearing your face. I sat there on the cold concrete floor, the files spread out in front of me, as the sun rose higher, casting long, skeletal shadows across the empty room. And I realized something horrible. I hadn't just forgotten who I was. I had killed him. Left him to rot in the dark part of my mind, alone and afraid for years, maybe decades. And now he was back. Not to hurt me. Not to haunt me. Just to be seen. Just to be held. I closed my eyes and let the memories come. All of them. The good, the bad, the unbearable. I let them tear me apart. Because maybe, finally, that was the only way to put myself back together. This was my life. Every broken, splintered piece of it. And if I wanted to survive, I had to stop running. I had to become whole again. Even if it meant carrying the weight of everything I tried so hard to forget.